This lesson is about the order of operations in math. It is one of the most important and crucial things about math, from the basics and still on all the way to any single math courses. You really need to know the order of operations. But before we talk about the order of them, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, what are the operations in math? What do we mean when we say operations when we're talking about math, and not so much like doctors and surgery and hospitals? What are the operations in math? A few that usually come to mind is adding, and then when we think of adding, we think of subtracting, and then we also think of multiplying, and when we think of multiplying, we think about dividing. So these are the four basic things. And my question would be, what do all of these have in common? For example, multiplying and adding. They have in common where instead of doing 2 plus 2 plus 2, I can just do 2 3 times. So they're kind of hand in hand when we're dealing with adding and multiplying. And then another operation that we tend to forget about, because it only really shows up when we get to high school, grade 7, junior high math, and that is the exponents. This is also an operation, even though we don't really call it that. And what an exponent is when you have 2 to the power of 3, it's the same thing as doing 2 times 2 times 2, right? So exponents is actually a way of multiplying. So we can think of it this way, where we have exponents here, which deal with multiplying, and multiplying, which deals with adding, as I've just showed you in the last slide. If you think of it this way, there's a reason why we have a certain order to the order of operations. It's all kind of related, but we always start with exponents. We make our way down to multiplying and adding. But this isn't really what the order of operations is. The order of operations is more than just exponents, multiplying, and adding. And what we do is we call it, first we do the brackets, and then we do the exponents. And then we do multiplication. Some people do division, but multiplication and division are work hand in hand. And then we have addition and subtraction. So this is kind of like the hierarchy of our order of operations. We always start with brackets. Why? Because brackets are basically there to tell us who's the boss. Brackets tell us what we're going to be doing first before we do anything. And then if we go down to exponents, multiplication, all the way down to subtraction, well, it goes back to what I showed you here, where exponents is technically multiplying and multiplying is technically adding, which is what I showed you here. So that is kind of why we do the hierarchy of it this way. Where I teach and what I teach is I therefore call this BEMDAS. Some people call this BEDMAS. Some people call this PEM instead of parentheses. Instead of brackets, they say parentheses. But for the sake of my class and my teaching, I say BEMDAS. And so we're going to go through it this way. I just want to add one little thing. When we're dealing with multiplication and division and addition and subtraction, they're essentially the same importance. We do whichever comes first. And we'll talk about what that means in 1 second, whichever comes first. So as you're starting out, when you do BEMDAS or order of operations, it's really, really helpful for you to write down all of your steps. Even though you might be comfortable not writing them all down, when you are first beginning to do this, I suggest you write down all your steps. So my first example, so I'm going to call this example 1, looks like this. 3, 5 minus 2 squared times 4 divided by 6. So this is what I tell my students, what you're essentially going to be doing with this mathematical problem is you're going to read it like a book, which means that you're going to read it from left to right, right? When we deal with English, we read it from left to right. And remembering up top here that my order of operation is BEMDAS. The first thing that I see here that's catching my eye is this, which is the brackets. 3 squared times 4 divided by 6. And then if I keep going, the next thing that catches my eye is this 3 squared, because this is exponents. So 3 times 9 times 4 divided by 6. Now, why did I keep my brackets around the 9? If I didn't keep my brackets around the 9, it would look something like this, which is just confusing because it looks like it's 39, but it's not. So we put brackets around our 9 because it implies multiplication. That's what it means when the 3 and the brackets are side by side, it's multiplication. So now I've got a lot of things going on here. I got multiplication, and division. And notice how they're both kind of in the same step here. But I said to you, whichever comes first. So if we go here, this comes first. So we're going to do that first, and we're going to get 27 times 4 divided by 6. And then this comes first, so we're going to get 108 divided by 6, and we're going to get an answer of 18, because this is all that's left. Now, I just want to talk a little bit more about this part here. 3, 9 times 4, just this part specifically. I just want to zoom in on this part. In the last lesson, we talked about certain properties, associative, distributive, commutative. And I just want to talk to you about this piece here, because this is 3 times 9 times 4. And because it's all multiplication, it actually doesn't matter if we did this first, and it didn't matter if we did this first, and it actually doesn't even matter if we do 3 times 4 first. This is the associative property. So it really didn't matter what we did first. We could have even done all of this at the same time on our calculators and just went straight to 108 divided by 6. But I just wanted to take a second to talk to you about that, because it does deal with the properties that we spoke about in last lessons. Now let's keep going with a second example. We'll call this example 2. And just so that we don't forget, BEMDAS. Okay. Here we go with our next example. 3 plus 9. Let's do 3 plus 1. And let's put the exponent here. So minus 5 squared divided by 5. Okay. So again, we're reading it this way. And the first thing that comes to my mind is the brackets, right? So then we're going to be left with 3 plus 9 times 4 minus 5 squared divided by 5. And the next thing that comes into my mind is this. Now notice how I'm rewriting everything out. It helps me. It should definitely help you as we're doing things. Now, I got a plus, I got a minus, and then I got a division. And if I'm looking here at my order of operations, division comes before adding and subtracting. So I'm going to do that first. So I get 3 plus 36 minus 25 divided by 5 is 5. Now, I'm stuck here because I have a plus and I have a minus. And they're technically interchangeable, but we do whatever's first. In this case, the plus is first. So we're going to do 3 plus 36. So we're going to do 39 minus 5 and then 34. And that's it for the second example for order of operations. Now, let's see here if we can do a third example. I got a lot going on, but I'm more leaning towards this here and not so much the pluses and the minuses. So the first thing that I'm going to do that I see first is 9 times 4. So I have 36 divided by 3 plus 54 divided by 9 minus 3. Now I'm going to do something really cute, really simple. And I'm going to do the division all at once right away at the same time. Because they are both division, they are both pretty much side by side, and it really doesn't matter. What matters though is that we're going to add them only at the end. So 36 divided by 3 is 12, plus 54 divided by 9 is 6, minus 3. Now we're going to do this first because it comes first, and we have 18 minus 3, and the answer for this is 15. So if we're getting the hang of this, our order of operations, then you should be totally fine with simple operations, using exponents especially, remembering that there are things inside the brackets. The last thing that I want to address is the brackets. It's always a good thing to keep brackets where you see brackets, especially when they insinuate, as in this example, multiplication. Sometimes when you have brackets and if you had something that was like 4 plus 9, you would need to put brackets around those because it doesn't actually matter with addition. It matters with multiplication and it matters with division. But other than that, this is the basic order of operations, and I hope that you understand why they are in the order that they are. And remember that although I do it this way, you can always do it whatever way that your teacher or your class or you are familiar with, but it's all the same in terms of the order.